Welcome to Barbells and Motherhood. I'm your host, Julianne Bali, owner of Motherhood Barbell. I'm a pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach, CrossFit Level 1, and mom of 3. On this podcast, we discuss all things pre- and postnatal exercise, bust common myths such as don't lift over 20 pounds, educate about core and pelvic health, and explore all facets of motherhood. If you're a pregnant or postpartum mom that likes to throw around barbells, want to learn more about your pelvic floor and core, and looking for real research-based exercise guidance in any season of motherhood, this podcast is for you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Barbells and Motherhood. Today, I have my friend Jamie with me here, who I'm very excited to chat with. We have been Instagram friends for a couple of years now, I think, but I'm so excited to finally meet her, well, kind of face-to-face here on Zoom. And so, Jamie, go ahead and give us an intro of who you are and your background and everything like that.
So my name is Jamie Straker. I am located in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. I am a pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coach, and I own my own online. I guess I also run some in-person pre and postnatal fitness classes. So I guess a little bit of a background. I think one of the reasons that we first connected is our teaching backgrounds. So I used to teach elementary school and then had kids and just found that teaching wasn't feasible for my life with children. And then got into fitness and started taking courses and learning. And that was just about 7 years now I've been doing this. So yeah.
That's awesome. So did you originally start in pre-postnatal, or how did you find your way to this world?
Yeah, I started out in pre and postnatal, started when I was pregnant with my son, so my second. Just kind of wanted something to do fitness-wise, and it worked out. I just started teaching classes for other moms, could take my kids with me, and yeah, just kind of has snowballed from there.
So 7 years ago, what information did you have, and then how did you find more information as time went on, and how did that all go?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I took my general group fitness class or general group fitness and certification, and then started teaching and took I want to say it took me 2 hours to get my first pre and postnatal certification.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So did that and then was like, hold on a second. I know nothing. I'm not qualified to teach these people or lead them through these chapters. So then I took the Girls Gone Strong course, their certified pregnancy and postpartum coach program, learned a little bit more, still felt like, okay, now I have the basics, but what about more? And then I found Brianne Battle's pregnancy and postpartum athleticism program, took that, felt a little bit more confident, started offering more. And then I found Anthony Lowe and his stuff and got to take some in-person stuff. And I think his stuff has really evolved my coaching philosophies in the past couple of years, because I took his female athlete and then was part of his Peak Simplicity Masterclass, and I've just continued to learn and grow from him and the people that are in his courses. So yeah, it's just been learning more and more.
I think it's definitely, once you get in to learning about this stuff, it's like, oh my gosh, you get hungry and you just want to keep learning more and take more courses and find more information. And that was how I was when I also found Anthony Lowe eventually, and just barely also took his female athlete level 1. And it's amazing how your world just keeps opening up more and more of like, wow, there's so much to learn. And
so much.
It's fascinating.
What we know about people during this population has changed so much. Like when I started, I don't even think there was the research was so limited, yet now there's people who are really kind of figuring out what can women do during these chapters, and what about women who lift heavy things or are high level athletes? What about them? What do we know about them? How can we support them? I think we're just noticing these huge gaps in the support available to these people, to so many people during these chapters, and researchers are starting to fill it, and then we're able to use that information to guide our coaching, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's really, really awesome that more research is coming out. We just had that paper come out recently um, about heavy lifting during pregnancy and the Valsalva maneuver, and it's all so fascinating. And there are no absolutes, are there? There's no black and white, and that's kind of what we see online, though, is the black and white of it all. So
I
yeah,
know.
love it. So love that you're here and love that you're in this world, the pre-postnatal world. You're a voice that is much needed in all of the craziness online. And so what I wanted to dig in with you today specifically was about birth prep, because you run a course called Birth Prep 2.0. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your course and then really dig into, well, what do we need to know going into birth? What are, the top 3 things or the top 5 things, if we could even consolidate it and try to dig into that?
Yeah. Oh, this is going to be, there's lots to talk about, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even in this world, like in this realm, what I knew even after having my second child was like minimal, right?
Yeah.
Like I knew nothing and I've just learned more and more and more and been able to apply that to both fitness and in our birth prep course. So, yeah.
Yeah, so tell us a little about Birth Prep 2.0, and then we'll kind of dig into how we can prepare for birth.
Okay, so Birth Prep 2.0 is a 4-week online birth prep class that I run with Kelsey Valentine, who is a pelvic health physiotherapist. So most of the information comes from her, and I provide the realistic maybe application of some of the research and stuff that she finds, just coming at it as a mom, having my own experience. And also, so we developed the course in June of 2020, I think. Yeah, the beginning of the pandemic and all that fun stuff. And so we really I came at it from a lens of I knew nothing going into labor and birth. And I did like the traditional birth prep course at my hospital and was absolutely terrified of all aspects. And they never ever talked about that. They never talked about fear or your options. It was just, this is how you have a baby. These are your steps. And, and then the focus even postpartum was how to bath your baby. I wouldn't even say how to feed your baby. Maybe there was a teeny bit on breastfeeding and that was it. There was so much that's so important to support people during these chapters and it just wasn't given to me. So I wanted to be a part of the creation of this course so that information was included. And then Kelsey comes at it from a lens of a public health physiotherapist and all of the evidence-based information that is provided to help people utilize their biomechanics and reduce the risk of tearing and reduce the risk of assisted delivery or cesarean section, just even how to decrease pain. And then we talk a lot about postpartum, and the postpartum week is about the person who gave birth. So how do you recover after birth, and both vaginally and cesarean section? Because I think that's also a huge gap in care. Everyone just assumes that you're going to have a vaginal birth, but we know based on the statistics that so many people have cesareans and they also need to know how to recover and what that could look like for them. So,
yeah. That is a huge gap of, not only have you birthed a child, but in some cases you've had major abdominal surgery. How do you recover from that? How do you care for your baby and for you in that season? That's really difficult. And I love that you guys cover all of that to be able to bridge that gap for so many moms that need that. And so if we could, I don't know, if we could consolidate, what would you say is 3 to 5 things that I guess we can phrase it this way, of things that you wish that you had known going into your first birth that you just didn't have to prepare?
Yeah, I think these are if I could take these 3 things, these are the 3 things that I feel are within my scope and my power to give to people that I work with as well. So I didn't have them, and I think that my experience would have been totally different if I had them. So just that understanding of fear and knowing what it does to your body and how you can overcome that during pregnancy to help set yourself up for success during labor, birth, and postpartum. So I think that knowledge is important, and addressing that if you do have any fears, that it's normal and common and you're not alone. And there are things you can do. You don't need to just live in fear by yourself of whatever it is. And that, like, when people have fears of specific things, there's nothing too small or too big or too weird. Like, it's all individual, right? I think some people feel almost shame if they're fearful of specific things, but really it's all individual. So addressing fear, I think, is huge. And I think just the power of your mind. So I want any person who works with me during pregnancy to know that they are strong and capable. They aren't fragile. That they can do so much and they can do hard things. And I hope that transfers over to their labor, to their birth, and to their postpartum and motherhood journey. And then the third thing, I had it in my head and now it has gone. Oh, advocating for yourself. I think that you always have choices and options, and you can listen to what your birth care provider says, but your feelings, your thoughts are valid, and you can absolutely voice them and share them with whoever you're working with. And if that person isn't willing to listen to them, or you don't feel supported by them, then there will be somebody around the corner who will help you or support you so that you do feel that way. Because I think it's so important that people feel heard and validated in their experiences, in their choices. That was, a big thing that I feel like I didn't have. It was just told, this is what we're doing. And you trusted your OB and you went with it, right? And then in hindsight,
wait. Yeah. So did you get to go forward and have a different experience with subsequent children after you gained knowledge?
No, I didn't. I think I didn't start learning about all this stuff until after my second. And, I was part of a in-person birth prep course that was led by a physiotherapist in Edmonton. And when she started talking about this stuff, I was like, oh my God, this stuff, people need to know this stuff. At that point, I was like 2 years postpartum. Amy was like, oh my God, this information makes me feel like I could do this, which I didn't feel that way before both mine. So.
Right. So now you really, really, really want to help everybody feel that way, feel that empowerment. Pregnancy and preparing to birth is such a vulnerable time in a mom's life. And it is so easy for people to prey on those vulnerabilities and insecurities. And because this is kind of a tangent, but I've recently started posting on TikTok. And I posted a video the other day about your uterus pushes your baby out, not your pelvic floor or whatever. But it's amazing how many moms come out of the woodwork and just vent about these experiences that they've had with their birth and their experience with their provider. And one of the biggest things that I've been commenting, I guess, is choose a birth provider that supports autonomous birth. Because in the end, that's what's important, is you having control over your birth, and then being able to know that provider will be able to support you in your fears and in mindset work and all of the different things to prepare, is being able to then be really choosy with who you choose as your provider. And because it is so vulnerable, and I felt so sad for some of these stories that I was reading. And so I love that you are able to then be a voice to be able to help these moms that are commenting like, yeah, I didn't know this and I had this experience and it was kind of traumatic, or it was really hard. And then, yes, I do still get the comments of, I felt empowered and this is really great information. Thank you for sharing, but, we want that for all moms, though, to be able to feel empowered.
Totally. Yeah. And I know not everyone lives or has a situation where maybe they do get to choose, but I think also then supporting people, teaching them how to use their voices, how to feel empowered with knowledge so that they can have those discussions with their birth care provider if they don't have a choice in who it is, or to find that support system that will get them what they need, right? Maybe it's not your birth care provider, but maybe it is your partner or your doula or a friend or your coach or whoever it is that gives you that education and support that you feel you need.
Yeah, because then you don't have to feel like you're alone in it, and that there can be a whole team behind you, you know?
Totally.
And so what is one of the ways that you help moms prepare to know how to advocate for themselves? Say they don't have a choice in their provider. How would you help a mom prepare to be able to advocate for herself?
Yeah, I think knowledge is really important. So I think if you know that you have options, you're better able to express yourself or share them or discuss them with your provider. I was listening to a podcast recently. I would love to remember which one it is, but I don't. But they shared how oftentimes when we are like advocating for ourselves, we feel like we're saying no to our care provider, or that can be just like really difficult to feel like you're letting somebody down or you're doing something wrong or you're like quote unquote like a bad person by saying no to things. But alternatively, if you viewed it in terms of what you're saying yes to, so you're not saying no, you're saying yes to ABC, and are you okay with those things? And if you aren't, then figure out a way to find out what you can say yes to that makes you feel comfortable, or have that discussion so that you're coming at it from that lens instead of like this negative lens.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that is something that we all struggle with at some point in our life, of being able to realize that not only can we determine what we want, but that we deserve to have what we want too. And that we don't have to just accept it or just be like, yeah, that's what you're telling me what to do. So yeah, sounds good. I'll just do it. That like, no, we can take control of the choices in our life, especially when it comes to our birth, because that our birth experience matters. And that's something that we fight for against what the world says every day, because it's always, how's the baby? How's your baby doing? And never, how are you doing, mom?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. The focus shifts so much in postpartum to baby, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Mom kind of just gets left in the dust there, even though it's so important.
What
Yeah.
is one of the pinnacle things that you have in your birth prep course about helping them navigate postpartum?
So we take them straight from like hour one to that 6 week mark. So, what kind of things can you start in terms of exercise? So, what can that look like if you so choose? We try to highlight that
Yeah.
you can start as soon as you give birth, but you can wait. There's no timeline for anything. It's whatever feels good for you, whatever you need, and you can pick and choose that as you go too. So we talk about like what returning to exercise might look like in those first couple hours. We talk about prolapse, so what that might feel like in those first 6 weeks. We talk about diastasis, so how to check for that and how to kind of what you need to know about that in those first 6 weeks. We also talk about how to have your first bowel movement. I think that's also something that nobody talks about. And there can be a lot of fear around that, no matter what kind of birth you had, right? Like a lot of stuff went on down there, and now you got to get more stuff going on. Like,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was not covered in my course.
No, so many things that we just have to be like, well, nobody told me about this. And like,
how the hell am I going to do this? How's that going to come out of there after that came out of there?
right.
Like how to get out of bed after you've had a C-section. What kind of things do you look for when you're returning to exercise? How do you return to intimacy and intercourse? What could that look like? So we try to we talk about like your scars and managing your scar, whether it was from vaginal tearing or from a cesarean. So I think, yeah, all sorts of things we've tried to cover. Like each week, so within the 4 weeks, there's an hour and a half lecture of information. And then you also get a lab that has like either workouts or gives you opportunities to get hands-on practice with all the things that we're talking about. So yeah, there's tons and tons of content.
It sounds like a gold mine, honestly. Like, I wish every mom knew about this. Like, this sounds amazing. And it's such a great way to deliver the information that is so needed, because there may not be somebody they know to be able to go talk to find out this information. And so we're like, here it all is in this beautiful package of information
Yeah.
for you.
I think like one thing that really sets our course apart from lots out there, or from even an in-person course, is that we've really tried to provide a lot of different perspectives by providing like professional interviews, because like I have a different scope of practice than Kelsey does, and she has a different scope of practice than, say, a dietitian. And I think lots of people have questions about how to fuel your body, how to feed, things like that. So we've included interviews with a registered dietitian, a registered psychologist. So we're talking about mental health during pregnancy and postpartum. Another thing that wasn't even addressed, a lactation consultant. So that you have some tips and tools in your back pocket going into that postpartum period. We also provided like a birth doula that you can learn how they might support you. We have an anesthesiologist, so you can know what that process might look like for you. And she busts a ton of myths around the procedure of getting an epidural. And then we also have somebody who specializes in spinning babies. So there's
Awesome.
Yeah, we've just tried to provide, again, like so much information, and maybe people don't get through it all, but it's there for them, and you can kind of drip feed as you go, which is also nice.
Yeah, and they wouldn't have to try to navigate the hot mess that is Google and trying to find their answers. They would have a reliable place to find information for all of those things. I love it. You have absolutely every possible scope as a part of that, to be able to give them a well-rounded thing. And that's the dream though, isn't it? To collaborate with everyone.
Right, like have a team, right?
Yes, well-rounded experience for all moms, because like as fitness people, we can give them what we can give them, but then there's so many other things that they need. And so we are part of that bridge, Yeah. I think that's fabulous.
That's fabulous. Absolutely.
And I love that you have the mental health aspect as well. I wanted to touch on that, because that's, yes, physically recovering from birth is, as we know, can be up to a whole year of recovery. But what about our mental health too, of especially first time? Like yes, mentally recovering from birth each time is a thing, and definitely has been hard. But like that first time that you have a baby though, that mental shift, I just remember having like a moment after I had my first baby of just crying into my husband and just being like, this is like, our life is changing forever right now. And I'm responsible for this child for like 24/7. And like, it was just like this huge, it was just this huge, scary thing. And like, thank goodness I had the support that I needed emotionally to be able to process that. But it would have been nice to know, like, oh, I'm not feeling alone in this. Like, so many people are experiencing this and have experienced this. What comments do you have about, the mental health of mom and how important that is?
Yeah, I think it's just such a huge shift for people, right? Especially with your first, because your life just flips on a dime, right? And I think often what I hear from people is that they have these symptoms and they're like struggling or like wading through the mud of postpartum. And when they finally make it to the other side, or they talk to somebody else and then realize that what they were experiencing they didn't need to go through, or that they were really struggling, right? Or that they could have used some support, but they had no idea what the signs were, what the symptoms were, where they could even go for support, because everything has shifted, right? So sometimes I think it's just taken as this is now what postpartum is, right? That it's hard, you don't have much sleep, you struggle, but I don't know that has to be everybody's truth or everybody's life, and that sometimes, some support can make a world of difference. Support with your mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of, actually, it was a reel that you made. I think it was a year ago. I don't know. It was a long time ago. You made a reel that was like, hey, are you a new mom? And you're like, don't worry, it gets easier. And like, I wasn't a new mom at that point, but like, I was struggling at that point. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's so right. It does get easier.
Yeah.
And so I want to let the moms know that it does get easier. It doesn't mean that life is easy. It just means that it changes
Oh,
and it gets different. But that
yeah.
initial shock of being a new mom, it does get easier after
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you said, nothing is ever fully easy and it
Yeah.
definitely changes and evolves and every chapter has its own difficulties. But that, like, in my experience, those first couple, let's go with the whole first year. Oh, it can be hard. It's, yeah. And just, I think that letting moms know that they're not alone and there is help. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And you have how many children now?
I have two.
You have two. That's right. You had the two. And so how did you feel becoming a new mom for the second time when you had your second baby? And was that a weird mental shift as well? Because I feel like that's another mental health aspect that isn't talked about a lot with moms is adding a second baby or a third baby or whatever to a family and how that is mentally. So how was that for you?
I I found my second shift really hard. Adding in the second child, I don't know what. Maybe it's just because you aren't sleeping and you don't get that opportunity to like nap on the couch with your baby on your chest, which I know I
Mhm.
did a ton with my daughter, with my first, and then with the second, it was like there would be the odd time when they would both nap at the same time, so you got
Mm.
a little downtime, but it just felt hard. Like there was always something to do. We were always somebody to look after and trying to like. I remember trying to like feed my son. So he's like attached to my boob and I'm holding him, and my daughter's trying to go to the bathroom, but she can't get up on the toilet by herself. So I'm like feeding and lifting her like onto the toilet. And
Oh, yes.
I remember when my husband went back to work, like I was grateful that I had his support for maybe 2 weeks. And then when he had to go back to work, I just like cried, like, how am I going to do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
This, yeah. But yeah, thankfully that figured it out for what works for us. Yeah, we managed, we survived.
I totally feel that though of the lovely timing our toddlers have to need to go potty right when the newborn needs to eat. That happened so many times when I had my second baby.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, on one hand, I love that I'm not tandem diapering right now. On the other hand, you always have to go potty when I'm feeding him.
I
It's so
know.
hard.
It never fails, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing that experience and that, we see you second and third time moms too, because that is a huge mental shift. And at least for me, like after I had my second, mentally, I did not bond with my baby right away because I was so attached to my first baby that I was like, well, it's not my first baby. Well, I don't even know who this other baby is. And like, I had this weird, like 24-hour period after having that baby of being like, no, I don't know. You're just not my first. And then of course that like was just like, I had just had a baby and my brain was just like tired and foggy and that went away. And of course I was like, yeah, of course I love you. And like, of course I'm going to bond with you. But like, that's hard. And I don't know if that's talked about a lot with
No.
postpartum experience.
Right. It's you're fed this story that you're gonna have your baby and you're gonna love them unconditionally, instantly, and it's just
Yeah.
gonna be all like sunshine and rainbows. Um, yeah, and that's not always the case, and that's also okay.
Yeah. And I think that's key. What you said is that it's okay, especially when you were talking about going into birth with fear and that fear is okay. Like it's okay that we are feeling that and that it's okay that we have a whole range of emotions going into birth and that fear does not mean weakness. Fear is just being human.
Love that. Yeah, it's normal, right? Everyone has fears.
Yeah.
I think it's what we do with them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mhm.
then, of course, it goes back to, okay, how will we prepare for this birth? What will we do to prepare with this fear that we're feeling, And so it's a lot of different variables and, just so much that goes into preparing to birth a baby and then having a baby. And I love that you guys are helping so many moms in this way. It's so needed. And I'm just so grateful that you offer this. And I hope more and more people can learn about it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we've got really great feedback from people. We have people who are taking it again for their second time. Using the information for their subsequent births. So it's really cool to be a part of their journey and support them in that way. Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you have any last comments that you would like to make about preparing for birth or postpartum or anything that you would like moms to know or anything like that?
Oh, all these the big questions at the end. I just think that we have this idea that women, especially during pregnancy, are weak. And I would love to flip that narrative that you are strong and you are capable and you've got this.
Yes, you do. I love that so much. I think that is important for moms to know, that just because they're pregnant doesn't mean they're not capable or they're not strong anymore, because they are.
Absolutely. I think moms are the strongest.
Oh,
strongest people.
For sure.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, Jamie, how can we find you, and what other offers do you want to talk about, or anything that you have for your business?
Yeah, so I am on Instagram mostly at JStraker Fitness. I have a website, it's jstrakerfitness.com. So I offer online coaching, like one-to-one coaching, as well as the birth prep. And then if you're in Kelowna, I offer a prenatal fitness class where we get you an opportunity to kind of learn all the things that we're doing, that we teach in Birth Prep 2.0, but in a practical way, and get strong and stay strong in a community of other like-minded women. So that's what I have going on.
That's awesome. I am so excited that we got to have this conversation, and I can't wait for more and more people to take your birth course and learn about birth and be able to know that they are strong and they are capable. So thank you so much for joining me.
It's been lovely chatting with you.